Welcome to Retro Fanfic Retrospective, the podcast where we dredge up old fanfiction and expose it to the cold, harsh light of 2019. My name is Amato, Gentleman Burglar, and with me are...
Tori.
And Junior Officer Zenigata Dom.
Does Arsène Lupin? Is
Sure.
that how you say it? Does Arsène Lupin have a Zenigata figure, though?
Yeah, Detective something French.
I always really liked Zenigata. I feel bad for him. Like, I don't know. He works hard.
I know, right? Except that isn't he also a cop, so...
Well, it's, you root for the underdog. And in the context of Lupin III, the cops are definitely the underdogs.
Zenigata isn't a good cop. He doesn't do copying duties. He does track down Lupin, and that's it.
Yeah,
If
that's
it happens
true.
to go along with cop work, then they do that also.
That's a really good point.
He serves in Interpol alongside Chun-Li, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I've kind of learned to read cops in media, as like not really cops, because if anybody makes a piece of media that involves cops, they're going to kind of make them heroes. So it's like, all right.
Ganimard.
Ganimard. That sounds right.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he does not appear in our story today.
No.
You're right.
Yeah.
Actually, not that many characters appear in this story.
Well, it's a short story.
Yes.
So what are we talking about today?
Well, what are we talking about? I don't know. We are reading a very old piece of fan fiction. It is from The Extraordinary Adventures... Well, that's not quite true. It is a Arsène Lupin story by Maurice Leblanc. And originally, those stories were serialized. Mm-hmm. Now, the first collection of those stories, compilation, is called The Extraordinary Adventures of Arsène Lupin, Gentleman Burglar. I'm not really trying the French. Arsène Lupin. I'm American.
I think it's fair if we just anglicize, but we have to.
Yeah, Lupin.
Yeah, I wasn't going to try with the French anyway. I don't know what y'all take me for.
Anyway, the last story in that collection, which you can find on Project Gutenberg, and there's a link there at bit.ly/RFR... Well, actually, it's RFR Holmes, Holmes, Sherlock Holmes. Because the story we're reading is Sherlock Holmes Arrives Too Late, the last Arsène Lupin story that is archived in this collection.
I got tricked. I thought we were reading a Persona 5 fan fiction. I got excited for a second.
Oh, yeah, the main character is, I want to say Stand.
That's where I went to. Stand, yeah.
The main character is Shadow.
Persona?
Persona. Oh, yeah, the name of the series. Main character's persona in that game is Lupin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Arsène.
Arsène?
Yeah, it's that character, yeah.
Right. Does everyone have fictional character stands?
They all have fictional thieves as their stands.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Like different brigands or pirates or stuff like that.
Like who else besides Lupin?
I don't know. I bought the game. I got so excited when it came out. I played a little bit. Then I remembered I'm not in high school anymore. I don't sit down and play JRPGs for 24 hours at a time.
Oh, I thought you were going to say I'm not in high school anymore. I don't care about these high schoolers and their drama.
Oh, no, I do care. I care so much.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you ever stop caring about high schoolers and their drama?
I mean, you should see
the main focus of adult life from, a media, apparently.
Well, you should see the history of my manga app of what I'm reading.
Now, the only Persona game I've played is Persona 4. Mm-hmm. And more so than the high school, I just got so excited about the small-town Japanese life. Because, having lived in a very small Japanese town, I could relate so much to, the little girl's excitement about going to the mall. Yeah. The large grocery store.
Junes, yeah.
Junes, right. Everything's great at your Junes.
Exactly.
The little jingle for our local grocery store that you had to, take a ferry to get to was... Oishii tokimeki yuazu. Delicious life. Yours. Yours is the name of the place.
Oh, yours.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds kind of like a child vampire theme song or something. Delicious life. Eat life here.
By the way, Amada, they did announce their Persona 5.5 release.
For the Nintendo Switch?
Not PS4.
I don't care. I don't want to hear it. Don't tell me about it.
Persona games exist outside of handhelds.
Look, my game systems don't exist outside of handhelds, and the Switch is only half a handheld, even though I'm only ever going to use it as a handheld.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Anyway, did you want to actually tell me something about that 5.5 thing?
No.
Okay.
I just wanted to tell you it wasn't a handheld.
Just taunting me.
Yes.
The point is Arsène Lupin. Now, I know nothing about him, really. I feel like I read this book a long time ago, and I felt very neutral to it.
Yeah, I feel like Lupin's kind of just like the gentleman thief, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say about him as a character. It's kind of hard to like or dislike him a lot of the time.
I think the thing about him is that he's the gentleman thief. Like, the story that we're reading is from 1906. I think he kind of made the mold, right?
Oh, of course, yes. I wasn't saying that. I mean, I don't know any other
Well, some of my best friends are gentleman thieves.
Oh, okay. Well, I haven't met them.
So I'm an authority.
Like the second story in this collection is one where he sends a notice to the person he's robbing, telling them when it's going to happen.
Yeah,
So
that's like so done now.
the invention of that whole trope. Yeah.
Yeah. He kind of does that in... No, he doesn't exactly do that in the story that we read.
No, there's
No.
a couple times where he says face to face, "I'm going to rob you."
Yes. But this story starts really kind of close to the action. It's really funny the way it starts.
Well, I'm kind of surprised I haven't read any of these before because, like, I kind of forget that I secretly love mysteries. So, like, I have read a considerable amount of Sherlock Holmes, and I was into even Detective Conan for a while, and other such stories. So I'm kind of surprised I hadn't gotten to this at some point, which is why I got excited. And instead of reading just the assigned story, I read the whole volume of the first book.
Good, you'll have some context because, like, one of the
Yeah.
characters in here, I was like, oh, wait, I'm supposed to, like, have read all these stories.
That's from the first story.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How convenient. Now, that's a good segue talking about Sherlock Holmes, though, because I forgot. We are not reading this because it's an Arsène Lupin story.
No.
We are reading it because it is a piece of Sherlock Holmes fan fiction by my definition. Sherlock Holmes
Yes.
appears in it. And for Sherlock Holmes, I also enjoy Sherlock Holmes. I feel like I can't remember reading much of it until studying abroad in Japan, at which point I was really hurting for things to read in English. And this collection of the first half of all the Sherlock Holmes stories was like the cheapest book per page count at the local, English language bookstore. And so I just bought it and I read like half of all Sherlock Holmes stories.
The Sherlock Holmes stories are pretty pulpy, but pretty fun, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And this isn't the first mention of Sherlock Holmes in the canon. In the second story about Lupin in prison, they talk about, I've always said, Ganimard is our best detective. He is almost, you see how candid I am, he is almost as clever as Sherlock Holmes.
Is he actually?
I mean, he's good, but Lupin's just better.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
That's interesting that mention of Sherlock Holmes existing in the same fictional universe goes back that far to the very second story of Arsène Lupin.
Now, were these, was Maurice Leblanc writing around the same time that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was?
Yeah, they were contemporary.
I'm pretty sure, right?
So
if I have my timelines
Arthur
correct.
Conan Doyle got to get personally upset at this story and tell him to stop.
Yes.
And they're lawyers, I believe.
Quite funny. And I'll get to this later, but I think the portrayal of Holmes is especially funny in this story.
I think it's not an accurate portrayal at all.
No, it's not a very positive portrayal, and I can see why Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was kind of upset about it. But it's also interesting to think of the fact that, like, they were probably, like, Maurice Leblanc at least was inspired by the Sherlock Holmes stories to, like, want to include this character so much in his own work. And I love that because when Don was talking earlier about being interested in detective fiction, I was like, how's detective fiction related to thief fiction? I'm like, oh, well, because they're all, like, there's an incredible mystery and the talent at what they do in executing these kind of finite steps. They kind of are the same genre in certain ways.
There's a couple of other stories in this book where Lupin isn't the first thief on the scene, and Lupin is pretty much as good a detective as anybody else, figuring out what happened and how they did it.
Yeah.
It's just what they did afterwards was the thief part. Instead of turning them to the police, they impersonated Ganimard, approached the victim, told them they're going to arrest them if they didn't hand over the black pearl, and then take the pearl for themselves.
So yeah, Lupin it's definitely kind of a detective more than a thief, I think, a lot of the time.
Yeah, he's a body socialite.
Yeah.
So, sure, we can jump into the story. It's, again, called Sherlock Holmes Arrives Too Late. And despite the title, I was kind of expecting Sherlock Holmes to show up earlier in the story. I don't know what I was thinking.
But even so, I don't think Sherlock Holmes was too late.
No, I don't think he
wasn't.
was.
That's the thing.
But-
And that's a really weird part about the story.
Yeah.
I actually really like it, but let's go through the story and I can tell you what I think about that.
Okay.
Because I didn't give some context.
So it starts off, and there's this guy. He's like a rich socialite named Devon, and he has like a bunch of people over to his like classy old castle like manor house for like a party. And one of those people is this artist acquaintance of his named Velmont, who he's met several times. It's also like a friend of a friend.
The weird person in there that people mentioned might be Lupin, but couldn't possibly be Lupin, is always in these stories Lupin.
Yeah, so this guy Velmont is Lupin.
Including when it's in first person.
That's even when it's in first person.
The first story and like another one story starts in first person, then it's revealed later that this first person perspective is Lupin themselves.
Oh, that's kind of creative. See, in this one, it's really funny because the first line is it is really remarkable, Velmont. What a close resemblance you bear to Arsène Lupin. And it's just like, yeah, of course that character is Lupin. But
right.
then you almost sort of expect it not to be, because like, why would it just that be the first line of the story?
But that's a recurring theme of these stories, so
Of
that people
course.
think they look like Lupin, then they laugh it off, but still pull off the job anyway.
So it's like a running joke at this point with like kind of like a Clark
that he
Kent
can
style
just get
thing.
away with anything, apparently, even though people recognize him, they still don't think it's him.
In this world, people know about Lupin's exploits because Lupin themselves like owns a newspaper.
Really?
And they write to it and they publish stuff that's like Arsène Lupin has recently returned the Black Pearl to its proper owner and stuff like that, including several times where like his picture has been published. But he takes that as a challenge because Lupin is also, of course, a master of disguise.
Of course.
Yeah.
And he must have been like nurturing this, identity for a long time because he has some kind of background, which makes Devon here be like, oh, he couldn't possibly be. And, when people say, when he's told, you look a lot like Arsène Lupin, Lupin/Velmont is just like, yeah, I get that a lot. And just kind of laughs it off.
Because like
Everybody
you
goes
would,
along.
yeah, I get that all the time,
Right.
And he must expect it at this point, if it's a recurring thing, that he's just going to be recognized, and that's just, he laughs it off, and somehow that sort of works.
Well, in his story, he also has a solid references and backstory.
Right.
Where he's
Right.
He's a known artist that people know about and has painted stuff, and he's went to like a country club with this guy's cousin who knew him personally, so he had credentials at the wazoo.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember in some of like the recent heist type role playing games, I feel like one of the roles is like someone who has just a whole lot of identities for that kind of, more than disguises, just like identities they've been building up.
Yeah.
That kind of, I forget the names of those. There's been like a couple of those kinds of games recently, but
Like the face character sort of thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other thing about Devon, about him not being very smart, I guess, or like at least not savvy, is that he's also really eager to tell his guests about this cool mystery that's going on. He's like, oh, tomorrow Sherlock Holmes is going to arrive to look into this like extremely mysterious thing that I want to tell you all about right now.
Well, we have to remember this is back in early 1900s. And so they didn't have Pokemon for entertainment back then, so they had to find some ways to entertain themselves.
This is a very typical like murder mystery dinner party setup. You know what I mean? Like, he has a party and he just wants to share his mystery so much, so he does. So.
I mean, I think etiquette was you didn't invite people over for a dinner party until you had a mystery that warranted inviting Sherlock Holmes over.
Yeah, and they
Yeah, of course.
they also like invited all the prerequisite characters. They had like the vicar and like the young socialite and the mysterious artist, and they had a good cast.
Yeah, they don't get a whole lot to do, but it's a good cast.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mrs. Peacock was there.
The
Colonel
twist ending
Mustard.
is he's just actually hosting How to Host a Murder dinner party type thing.
Yeah.
Everyone's just been assigned roles.
Amato, you spoiled it.
So here's the general deal. He's got this like study with a lot of valuable books and art. And he knows that there's a secret passage into it from historical references. But there's no one knows how to find that secret passage in the place, and he doesn't want to tear up the walls because it's like he owns this really old like kind of manor thing that's
Yeah, he bought a medieval castle that's been maintained throughout the years.
so it's like a historic piece of architecture.
like different kings have visited at different points.
Yeah. So he knows there's a secret passage, and there's references to it in like 2 different books, one that was in the study and one that was in the National Library in Paris, and they have different information in them.
Because they have different handwritten notes in the margins.
Yeah. We don't need to go into like blow by blow of all that information.
Yeah.
But the basic deal is that Arsene... Wait, did Arsene Lupin actually announce he was going to steal this stuff?
You kind of did it in a playful tone. It was like, you're Lupin. Oh, you're right. I'm Lupin. I'm going to steal your stuff.
No, yeah, I meant like officially. This guy...
No.
Oh, Arsene Lupin is in the neighborhood he knows.
Through the papers.
That is known, right, through the papers. And so he's invited Sherlock Holmes over to investigate and figure out what the secret passage is all about and, like, prevent Arsene Lupin from stealing all the stuff.
He also announced that he has sent for Sherlock Holmes in order to protect his stuff.
To his whole dinner party.
To his whole dinner party that Holmes should be here any moment.
Yes.
Jumping ahead when Sherlock... we shouldn't jump ahead.
No.
Well, it won't take long to get there. It's not that long a story.
No.
Yeah.
And
Let's
so,
wait for that.
beyond all that, he's like, oh, and here's all the information that was in this book in my study that only is in my study until it was stolen or whatever.
2 anecdotes that were only passed down word of mouth.
Yeah, he's like, here's all the information about this secret passage. Oh yeah, anecdotes that were only word of mouth, right?
Yeah.
But I've never been able to figure it out in 10 years, so clearly nobody else can. And not Sherlock Holmes, Arsene Lupin being hidden among the guests, he now has all the information he needs. So good job. Good job,
Well,
man.
It's interesting though because there's supposed to be 2 pieces they need to unite to find the secret passage, and that's the word of mouth information. But apparently, one of them was in a book in the library or something.
No, these are the 2 different books we talked about before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Anyway, there was a book that disappeared a month ago.
right, that's the other reason he thinks that Lupin's after his
Right.
stuff. And he's right. Because Lupin has stolen a book that has important information about that secret passage.
Stolen
Correct, but like a
both
month
books.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah, they stolen both books within like a really close time period of each other.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
long story short, that night, Lupin comes in and steals all the stuff
Yeah.
through the secret passage. Because he was just kind of handed the remaining pieces he needed, and he figured it out,
Right.
and he comes
To
in.
put the 2 things together.
There's a brief description of Lupin opening the secret passage, getting Lupin's hired muscle in and pointing out which furniture to take and which to leave.
That's my favorite part about his
Yeah.
operation, is that he brings in movers, and he's just like, okay, yeah, like carry that, box up those things.
The unknown movers have appeared in different stories too.
That's so great.
Because like apparently to be a thief back then you had to steal furniture, which is huge.
I know, like, why?
If you can do that without like I'm not sure I can do that without breaking something, let alone without breaking something, without waking somebody up, while taking it through a secret tunnel all
Yeah.
the way through the city.
These guys
underneath
are
the
real
moat.
professionals.
Real pros, yeah.
So I just love it. And
Like, and then it goes on to just describe, like, if they took it here. Like, it's great.
it's a living.
Yeah, there you go.
It's pretty funny. But then while he's there, he leaves the little study that he snuck into and goes to like a case of valuable, jewelry on display or something in the hall.
Yeah.
And he just he shoves it all into a specially prepared bag.
Yeah, he tells everybody else, go ahead and go home, I'll follow later. I need to wrap up.
Right. But then little Cindy Lou Who wanders in and sees him.
Pretty much.
And it's hilarious because he's just stuffing this linen bag and the pockets of his trousers with like jewelry and shit. He's like dripping out this stolen goods when his like girlfriend sees him.
Let me crib this from Wikipedia. A woman's jewels are stolen, and this character courts Miss Nelly. Lupin expert Inspector Ganimard is at the ship's destination waiting, and successfully arrests Lupin, who is this character. The jewels hidden in their camera are knowingly dropped into the water, and the next couple stories after that brought Lupin in prison.
Right. So he flirted with her and she helped him escape.
And he's mentioned at the end of the first story that he was really enamored with her and was like surprised that she covered for him and that won a place in his heart.
Well, that's interesting though, because in this story she doesn't seem to know that he's a thief.
He treats it like, oh my god, she walked in on me stealing stuff. And it's like, well, she knew you were R.C. Lupin? Gentleman thief. So, like, why are you so...
I thought, because they mentioned later in this story as well, that she didn't know because it said something like, he said something in his mind, like, she knew me only as Bernard, like, this common guy. Like, it seemed like she did not know.
Once Nellie kind of figured it out, he tried to say, "Oh, I'm not that bad of a thief. I'm a good guy. Really, you can like me. I'm not that sinful."
I see.
But now, as it happens, she's just by sheer coincidence a guest of this guy, and she walks in on him stuffing his pockets with all his jewelry.
With all the stolen
Yeah,
stuff.
because
He's
he
like,
expected the guest house to be empty, which it usually is.
Yeah.
But
and so
Lupin's like, "This looks bad."
backing away with pearls falling out of his pocket.
and he just puts them all back, basically, just like puts down the jewelry. He's like, "I'll return all the stuff from the study by like 3:00 tomorrow. Like you can believe me." And
He's like so chagrined, like
And he really wants Nellie to like him.
yes.
right,
Yeah.
I understand. He's
Like, I'm just gonna put it all back.
He's
I'm
kind of
so
panicking.
sorry. Yeah, no, he totally panics.
And so he hasn't really had the conversation with her, like about like, so how do you feel about robbing? You know?
They talked about it on the boat
Oh
before.
yeah,
That,
she's not a fan.
No.
Okay, they did talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't really remember because I didn't know it'd be on the test later, but
Fair enough.
So anyway,
So he's like, tomorrow by 3:00, I'll return everything. Nothing will induce me to break that promise. He's going to be like, I'm a good guy. And so the next day, he goes out through the secret passage. And the next day, this guy, Devon, Monsieur Devon, finds out that all his stuff was stolen. And he's like, Velmont must be Arsène Lupin, right? And then Velmont just comes out for breakfast and he's like, what's up? And,
Yeah.
And Devon, I feel like mostly Devon feels like it would be too embarrassing to accuse him of being Arsène Lupin.
Right.
Like, that's really it.
because at this point it's like meta knowledge.
Right.
He knows the flow of the story and know that it should be this guy, but he doesn't have any actual proof to tell
None
the
at all.
police.
Yeah.
So this point in the story, you'd go like, "The killer's in there. Please help me." They'd be like, "No, you're just crazy. Go back in there, have something, calm down."
yeah. Well, I mean, realistically, too, he's been so worried about a potential robbery that hasn't happened to him yet. I don't know if.
Well,
They also mentioned him being so incredibly rich that just doesn't really hurt his bottom line at all.
yeah,
yes.
you're right. He's also kind of happy that he has a talking point for his party, right?
It's a good one.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it says like he was kind of upset, but also he was so rich he could bear the loss philosophically.
Yeah.
And I think philosophically was the word they used. So that's kind of cute. I mean, makes you feel good about your protagonist if you're stealing from the ultra rich, right? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, just take his shit, go for it.
Yeah, the targets are usually ultra rich and very weird or stingy or terrible people. Except for the one that was dead when you found it, but that was a different story.
And so at 3:00, the army brings back all of the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lupin had like forged orders for like a nearby like group of army peeps.
Which is terrifying if you think about it. Forged military orders that they followed without question.
I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't. Yeah, it is terrifying. It also did not involve like arresting or killing anybody. It was just like deliver these packages to this place.
But it could have.
I know, but then, well, Sherlock Holmes sees the note, correct?
Later on, yeah.
And he's like, it's a forgery, a clever one, but
Yeah.
a forgery.
No,
But
they pass it
apparently-
to the the actual
oh,
general
okay,
in charge.
that's right. The general in charge discovers it's a forgery. So,
Yeah.
Somebody could tell it was a forgery. It's just,
But not in time though.
damn no.
So all the stuff is returned by that means, and that's nice. Whatever. And he gets to go up as in his what do you call it when you're keeping up a guise?
Disguise?
In his
face?
disguise, yeah, in his role or whatever. And he's like, "Have I not kept my promise?" But she kind of doesn't warm to him as much until he's like, "Can't you remember back on the ship when we were flirting? And can't you look at me like you looked at me back then?" And she does.
Thinking back, I kind of liked it that she wasn't merely, "Oh, you're right," swoon. It was just like, "You're still a weird, freaky criminal."
Yeah, no, she wasn't.
But yeah,
She's pretty put off, even though you're right. I did look back, and it is clear in the story that she helped him escape before. So she knew this, and yet it's very off-putting to her to see him actually do it.
Yeah, at the end of this conversation, she points to the stolen ring he's wearing, and he's like, "You're right. I'm Arsène Lupin, and nothing can be changed."
Yeah,
And-
he said like, "I've cleaned up. I returned everything. I swear I'm good." Then she points to the ring. It's like, okay.
Oops.
He's like, "I'll show myself out."
Sorry.
The weird thing about this is that she does not say a word in this whole story.
Right.
It's
yeah.
very
Wait, what?
strange. She doesn't have any lines.
Are you kidding me?
No.
I didn't really notice.
Are
I
you-
noticed.
No, she must.
You hear her thoughts once or
You
twice.
hear her thoughts. They're quite well described. She doesn't say?
Nope.
No, she does. She says she warns him initially when she hears footsteps.
Oh, she has a few words. You're right.
I mean, not that that's, of a huge significance. It's
she tells
very
him
early
she
on.
tells him to escape.
Yes.
And that is actually like 3 distinct lines of the same purpose. But in this conversation later on, when he's like talking about stuff, she's kind of silent. I guess she's just
Still,
snubbing him.
Yes, she is silent. That's very deliberate later on.
But I'm still not sure it's enough to get a SAG card.
And so Lupin heads to the train station. He's still in his guise. Mm-hmm. And along the way, he meets Sherlock Holmes, who has arrived, and who asks for directions to the castle. And he gives him directions.
I love this part where they cross.
It's pretty cool. Now, this is Sherlock Holmes in this story. Mm-hmm. 50 years of age, tall, smooth-shaven, wearing clothes of a foreign cut, which is to say not French, carrying a heavy cane and a small satchel strapped around his shoulder, speaks fluent French with an English accent.
Right.
So this is like later Sherlock Holmes in his career. I forget how old the character lives to be.
Because I think Sherlock Holmes started in like 1880s or so. It continued past this point, but was a well-established character before Lupin started.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of the Sherlock Holmes timeline and like how old he is in most of his cases and such.
I don't know.
I think all of his famous cases happened before he's 50. And
Well, yeah, because doesn't he die?
yeah, he dies, but he comes back because he's too popular.
Okay.
X-Men style.
Yeah, it's a Marvel character.
Right. And he gives him directions, gives Sherlock Holmes directions, and says they are expecting you.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
And this is a great part. You want to read it?
You go for it.
Yes, my friend Devon told us last night that you were coming, and I am delighted to be the first to welcome you. Sherlock Holmes has no more ardent admirer than myself. There was a touch of irony in his voice that he quickly regretted, for Sherlock Holmes scrutinized him from head to foot with such a keen, penetrating eye that Arsene Lupin experienced the sensation of being seized, imprisoned, and registered by that look more thoroughly and precisely than he had ever been by a camera.
See, it's stuff like this that make me think that Matt LeBlanc, the author,
Maurice
LeBlanc, really actually admired Sherlock Holmes because, like, it was like a passing offhand comment would immediately put you under this sort of intense scrutinization that you could feel.
Like, I know, like, Sherlock Holmes doesn't need much of an excuse to look at you and, like, determine your life story.
Yeah.
But, like, if you say something a little bit out of place like that,
yeah.
No more ardent admirer than myself.
Well,
he's like...
There's also 4 periods. No more ardent admirer than myself.
and I like... Lupin's thoughts coming out of this are like, well, I can never use a disguise again around Sherlock Holmes because like he will recognize me immediately after that.
And then there's a part later that I liked.
Yeah, they bow to each other, they go.
Well, then for a moment, he and Arsene Lupin gazed at each other, and if a person could have seen them at that moment, it would have been at an interesting sight, and memorable as the first meeting of 2 remarkable men, so strange, so powerfully equipped, both of superior quality and destined by fate, through their peculiar attributes to hurl themselves one at the other like 2 equal forces that nature opposes, one against the other, in the realms of space.
Yeah, that's some real dramatic rival description.
Yeah, it's very dramatic. And, of course, the author terms them like 2 equal men as well, which I feel like may have been an interesting provocation to like Conan Doyle in this instance, like because he obviously did go on.
But if you have them in the same universe, they have to be equal, otherwise,
of course,
it would just be over.
Of course. Well, one, it's important to point out now that the description of Holmes is pretty on the nose because he hasn't done much. He's sized up the man, and you expected him to do so. But as he goes on, he's given a lot less character than Lupin is.
He baws a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, he's very crotchety. He's not...
He's very...
Like, that's why I have to seize on to this being an older Sherlock Holmes, because he doesn't talk like Sherlock Holmes does in Sherlock Holmes stories at all.
No.
He responds to every other thing with, bah!
Right. It's like Sherlock Holmes / Ebenezer Scrooge.
Right. And as we go on, we'll see. He's just very rude to everyone.
My dear Watson.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like... Holmes is kind of a rude guy when he's on his mission, but like in this he's just rude nonstop.
They mention later in the story where Holmes said that they recognized Lupin on sight, pretty much.
Yes.
Which is fair. But when asked why they didn't arrest them even when in this scene we didn't talk about, they were passed by
Yes.
by police officers.
Right, so you could have called the police over and been like, arrest this man.
Yeah,
I'm Sherlock Holmes.
Holmes is like, I don't take opportunities by chance. I create them.
Yeah, it also doesn't sound.
Yeah,
I don't think that was very Sherlock Holmes. You've read a bit of Sherlock Holmes, right?
I mean, Sherlock Holmes, I feel like that was out of character.
Yeah.
Because he does not view, he wants an intellectual challenge, but he doesn't view detective versus criminal as a sort of like, oh, I need to be gentlemanly towards the criminals. That is not part of his attitude.
Yeah, he just tries to solve the crime and hopes for a good challenge along the way.
And once he figures it out, he's often like, we got to go quick, like before they get away.
Yeah.
Like we got to, seize whatever physical opportunities are at hand as well.
Like get all the police officers, get all the footmen out. We'll take every advantage possible.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if now is a good time to talk about, because as I mentioned earlier in the podcast today, there's a lot of things I wanted to criticize about the portrayal of Holmes, but maybe we should get through it first to get into that.
Not too much more left in the story, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe we can get to the end.
well-
It's just, I have quite a few notes.
Mostly
on-
it's Sherlock Holmes unraveling the mystery of the hidden passage.
He's a little bit annoyed with Monsieur Devon for good reason, where Devon's like, he explains to him everything that happened. And the first thing Sherlock Holmes is like, well, if you hadn't told everybody that I was coming, then your things would not have been stolen yesterday.
Then I would have been here before it happened.
Right. Devon's like, well, when would they have been stolen? And he's like, I don't know, tomorrow, like in a few days. It just, obviously they stole it because they knew I was coming today.
Yeah.
And so that's annoying. And he's like, also, by the way, you also totally gave Arsène Lupin the information he needed because you were telling everybody about it. And at the end of this, he's like, well, I'm off because...
Yeah, pretty much what happens in the rest of the story is you get walked through the mystery and how it's solved and how clever everybody is.
Oh, yeah, and Arsène...
Right.
Sherlock Holmes does that he's like, okay, so you gave Arsène Lupin the information he needed, and an hour later he went and stole the stuff.
Right.
So I'm only giving myself an hour to do this, because I clearly don't need more time than Lupin does.
Right.
And so, he figures it out within an hour, and he explains the trick, and, they get led around. And the secret passage leads to a nearby old church.
Yeah.
And Lupin has sent a car to pick them up at the church. Sent a chauffeur there to wait for them.
So they don't have to walk back.
And eventually, they consider it, and then they're like, sure. They take the car.
Yeah.
And in the car is a message to him, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a letter and a watch. Is that right?
Yes.
Is there a letter? What does it say? It is just a package addressed Sherlock Holmes from Arsène Lupin. And inside is
his watch.
Sherlock Holmes' watch,
Yes.
which Arsène Lupin pickpocketed when they met earlier.
And when they shook hands, yeah. Which,
I guess...
And
Yeah.
No, I know that's what happened. It's I guess we can say he's such a good pickpocket, he can take Sherlock Holmes'
It's
watch.
just-
I guess Sherlock Holmes is not immune to pickpocketry, but it feels a little bit...
But Sherlock Holmes is a good pickpocket himself.
Yeah.
I know. This is the start of my criticism, which is that Sherlock Holmes feels a little indifferent in this, a little naive and a little pissy. Because when he finds out that his watch has been taken, what is his name? Devan, makes a clear point of noting how upset Holmes is about it. And
Well, it's he laughs about it. He says, that's really funny.
Yeah.
And the Englishman never moved a muscle.
Yes.
On the way to Dieppe, he never spoke a word, but fixed his gaze on the flying landscape. His silence was terrible, unfathomable, more violent than the wildest rage. That's pretty
Correct.
intense for Sherlock Holmes.
It's pretty intense. Holmes is given a lot of crotchety moments. He's given this wild rage at having his watch stolen. That's happened to him before. He's had things stolen. He's recovered them. He's focused on problems.
The first story is the Lady in Red, right? Where somebody gets a one-over on him and he doesn't freak out like this.
Right.
No.
Well, of course,
He's
different
not-
characters can get a one-over on him with different results.
Yeah.
But yes, he does freak out quite a bit on Lupin. And it's just, his characterization in this is just, I don't know. It's he's supposed to be very self-confident, and in this he feels very insecure.
That's it, yeah.
Insecure, I think you've hit on it. And, at the end of that sequence,
Nothing phases Sherlock Holmes, but everything phases him in this
Well, like
story.
Sherlock Holmes phases Sherlock Holmes. He gets into like melancholy.
Oh,
Right,
sure,
but
sure.
boredom
But
phases
his
him?
own,
Yeah,
you know, in his own private space, not in front of anybody else. He plays his violin, you know, he's melancholy. Anyway,
And he
I have
also
a lot
gets,
of passion for the character, so excuse me.
He also gets philosophically upset at like Moriarty, where he's like, he's doing bad crimes and like I haven't been able to pin him down. But like,
Yes.
I don't think he gets this personally offended by Moriarty killing him, much less by like
No, yeah.
someone taking his watch.
Lupin's like not a personal mental opponent to him. He's a clever thief, but Sherlock Holmes is way more self-confident than that. He just wouldn't be so like irate about something so petty to me.
At the end, Sherlock gives a little speech, and he says, yes, he's a clever man, but someday I shall have the pleasure of placing on his shoulder the hand I now offer to you, Monsieur Devon. And I believe that Arsène Lupin and Sherlock Holmes will meet again someday. Yes, the world is too small. We will meet. We must meet. And then. A speech like that wouldn't be out of place, but the barely
Yes.
contained, unfathomable rage.
And the fact
out of
that
place.
the speech is like, I'm gonna catch him, too, like on top of that. Like, it's fine, you know, he can be like, I'm gonna catch him.
Yeah.
But it's like on top of everything else, it feels like he's not treating him as an opponent so much as like something he needs to like kill and destroy. Like, he feels like a predator, like an irate predator, you know? Like, whereas Sherlock Holmes, the character to me would, you know, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's character would be calm and would be like intrigued by someone he felt was a mental equal.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. The nuance is a little bit different, and we're reading this in translation, so like I can't speak to all the nuance. But I actually think the speech itself is okay in tone. He's not going to be like, I am the new Zenigata, I will pursue this man to the ends of the earth. He's just like, we're going to run into each other again.
Yeah.
Just by the nature of our occupations.
Yeah.
I just feel like it could have been a little better if you'd be like, if we run into each other, we're going to run into each other again, and I'm sure it's going to be really interesting, rather than
yeah.
like, and I'm going to put the hand of justice on him. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I don't think
Maybe he just really, really likes that watch.
But he got it back.
That's true.
I'm not sure Holmes ever talked much about justice in particular. He
Yeah,
just kind of wants to
exactly,
win,
yeah.
right?
Well,
Yeah.
not even that. He wants to solve the mystery.
Yeah.
That's always been his character. Like, he's not... the whole point of him is that he's not really into society's morals.
But he does.
That's why he can be kind of a jackass, you know?
But he does just follow the letter of the morals just when he has to because he recognizes it.
when it's interesting.
Yeah, but it's not like I must uphold these morals.
No, he does what he thinks is most interesting as a puzzle. And this, it just felt like very, like, it was all personal.
Well, no, the best Sherlock Holmes moment in this story is about that, where he comes and it's like, oh, Sherlock, like Arsène Lupin already came, he stole the stuff, he left, and he brought the stuff back. And so at that point, he's like, well, I'm going back home.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause
Until
he had no interest,
until his
of
host is like,
course.
wait, there's lots of mysteries that we still don't understand the answers to, and Sherlock Holmes is like, oh, okay, I'll stick around for a bit.
No, wait. No one has any idea how he did it or how it happened or how he got into the towers. Like, okay, go on.
Yeah, right. Now you have my interest.
To me, though, it should have felt like he would have thought of that at first as well. Like, just because something, like, the stuff has
Yeah.
been returned, it doesn't mean... Sherlock Holmes' mind wouldn't jump to the mystery is solved because the stuff is returned.
Yeah,
the
I
fact
see
that a
what you
third
mean.
party had to remind him... Okay, I'm going to stop now.
Because-
I think I've covered all my criticisms.
But you're right, because there's multiple Sherlock Holmes stories where Holmes is like, I know who did it. I just need to figure out all the details about how they did it before I can be satisfied.
Right.
That's
right.
most Sherlock Holmes stories. Like, he will usually, when he goes back to his client, be like, well, I knew like 3 weeks ago, but I just wanted to wait to tell you all of this
But
other stuff.
I had to wait to trap him to get this last piece of evidence.
Exactly,
for the
yeah.
entire thing.
Anything else we want to talk about with the story as a whole?
I think I enjoyed this one a little bit more than the other Lupin stories in this collection. This one had the most dynamic moments, most emotion coming from Lupin themselves, because most of the time Lupin just wins, and they're frankly kind of boring. But this one, it has some ups, some downs, some challenges. Lupin is worried for a second, and you really do feel worried for him, and I find that interesting.
Yeah, there's good emotion coming off of Lupin. I wish the same attention had been given to Holmes, you know, which is kind of where my brain's at. But Lupin himself seemed kind of vulnerable, and I thought that was kind of sweet.
Well, Dom, you mentioned that this story was more interesting, and it's probably partially because of the presence of Holmes, right? And I think you don't think so. I think it's the Lupin. Well, you know, that's like what causes the tension is having an opponent, right?
Yeah, most of these other stories don't have tension because there's nothing to threaten Lupin.
Right.
Like Lupin, there's a couple of these where Lupin gets gets the wool pulled over their eyes, or like they get tricked, but then they're just like, oh, I'm out some money. Mm-hmm. But Lupin has an indeterminate amount of money already, so there doesn't seem any reason to be concerned about that.
I think my favorite part of the story is just the sheer, I don't know what to call it, chutzpah?
Yeah.
I don't know, ballsiness? It's not really.
Same thing.
It's like of Maurice Leblanc in taking a character like from an author who is still around and writing and putting them up against your own original character and being like, and my character comes out on top.
Can we segue this into why this is a fan fiction, what the results were afterwards?
I suppose what the results were.
Well, because in this Gutenberg version we're reading, after the last line it says, the further startling and thrilling adventures of Arsène Lupin will be found in the book entitled Arsène Lupin versus Sherlock Holmes.
Yes. Because
oh, yes.
the cease and desist letters came immediately.
Yeah, resembling but legally distinct from Sherlock Holmes.
Oh my god, but the fact that anybody... Like, in this day and age, that would be an instant lawsuit if someone was like, Sherlock Holmes is my character.
Well, no, because then it becomes parody, right? You can release Board of the Rings with all of, like, the...
no, that's fair, yes. Under parody law, but
and I think that's a key division in my understanding of fan fiction, where like if you have him versus what is it, Sherlock Holmes, it's not fan fiction in my mind because you read Sherlock Holmes and you're like, that character is supposed to be Sherlock Holmes,
but
you're not saying that character is literally Sherlock Holmes in this story.
No, it's a parody.
So
character.
only this story, this is the only Arsène Lupin story where it's just Sherlock Holmes. Like that's the guy who's in the story,
right?
Like, you're supposed to understand that all the things that happened to Sherlock Holmes happened to this guy.
I don't know the story. This is the story of my OC versus Sherlock Holmes. Please rate and reply.
I know. It's like if I wrote a urban fantasy novel, and I had Harry Potter show up, and his name's Harry Potter, and it's just like Harry Potter 10 years after, and it's like an horror, and like, my character's cooler than Harry Potter. Like, and like, I just did that, and I published the story. Like, that's amazing.
You're a dark wizard that still casts the same magic.
You know, actually...
absolutely, you're a dark wizard anti-hero with a heart of gold. Yes.
Yeah.
Now that you're phrasing it that way, like this... Like, at first I was sort of like, is this really fan fiction? I mean, especially I think because of, like, the era it's coming from, before the idea of fan fiction came into the cultural consciousness, before we established what is fan fiction to us as a community. This is the most fanficky thing ever.
I know.
Your character is better than Sherlock Holmes. That's... Oh my god.
And that's why you brought in Sherlock Holmes.
No, you have such a good point there. This, like... But I don't know how to describe that, you know? Like...
It's just amazing that he, like, did that in 1906.
Of course, like, it totally is.
They immediately got litigated.
Yeah, it's just great. I don't think it's a great story. It's especially not a great Sherlock Holmes story.
No.
But the story of this story existing is one that I love.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we read this because it makes me think that people maybe haven't changed that much in the last.
So join us on our further
years.
Exploration of ancient fan fiction.
God, can we dredge up any more other ones like this? Like a famous author writing a character and saying it's better than this other famous author's character.
If you know of any examples, I want to hear it.
Well, see, that's the thing. It shocked me that this existed. Yeah. So, yeah, maybe our listeners have some suggestions, because I'd be very interested.
Right in. We will get before the 20th century, though, someday. We'll get back into the 1800s.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I'm not, but I'll be with you.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Next time, we are going to be reading a short and award-winning Star Wars story featuring Han Solo and also some other guy for Han Solo to hang out with who is less hairy than I want that person to be.
It's an OC hanging around with the main character, just like this story.
Similar to this story.
No, he's not unhairy, but...
Anyway, the story is called Rancor Delivery, and it was written by Z... Let me pull this up.
Rancor?
Rancor?
What's the emphasis on that syllable?
Rancor, right?
It's a noun, so... Turbine.
It's Rancor. I mean, they've said it.
Yeah, they've said it, yeah.
The story is called Rancor Delivery, and it was written by one Z.P. Florian. You can find the link there at bit.ly/rfrrancor. And if you don't know how to spell rancor, you are no true Star Wars fan. I'm going to gatekeep you right here.
It's also like a real life word too.
Oh,
like
you're right. It's spelled the same way.
Rage and anger. Yeah.
Rancor.
Or spite. Yeah.
Rancor. 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 Do I go to the next round of the spelling bee? That's the joke I'm making.
We missed that. That went right over my head. Yes, Amato, you can advance to the second round of the second grade spelling bee.
Excellent. And we will also advance to Rancor delivery next time. As for this was episode 42 of Retro Fanfic Retrospective. Sherlock Holmes Arrives Too Late by Maurice Leblanc. You can find a copy of it on Project Gutenberg, actually. It is public domain. And we have a link to that compilation at bit.ly/rfrholmes. Holmes. Holmes. The intro song is the weekly fare off of the album Popey's Incredible Adventure by Komiku. The outro song is Run Against the Universe from the same album. You can find that album and other works by Komiku at loyaltyfreakmusic.com. You can find our website at retrofanficretrospective.podbean.com or bit.ly/retrofanfic. We also are on Twitter at retrofanfic, on Facebook at retrofanfic, and I don't know, maybe we're other places that I've forgotten about and never update. I wouldn't know.
Check us on LinkedIn? No?
LinkedIn? I'm telling you, this is going on my resume, though. If you have questions, comments, or thoughts about the episode, contact us on any of those places or the comment or review thing on the podcast service you listen to. You can also email us at retrofanficretrospective@gmail.com and let us know about what ancient OCs were better than the fan characters that they appeared with. I'm Amato.
I'm literary inspector detective Tori.
I'm Dom.
We're just three Earth life forms trying to be gentlemanly to each other. Until next time, take care.
He pulled off his theft. No, he didn't steal anything. He fought for me. No, man. He stole something of no small value. Your heart.
Seriously?
Castle Cagliostro.
Oh, Castle of Cagliostro. Okay, I thought that was text from one of these stories.
No, this is the grandson.
You know, really, Lupin the Third is better than the original Lupin. Is it blasphemy for me to say that?
No, it's clear.
No.
We never hear about that
I
Lupin
think
the
so.
Second, though.
Well, actually, the Lupin manga really
I would
sucks.
like to know about
The original one.
I did read some of that, and it was not good.
It was terrible. But they have some new Lupin anime stuff that's pretty good, actually.
The Fujiko series is supposed to be good.
I heard that's supposed to be good, yeah. Yeah.